Now, Electricity Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says inequality in South Africa has manifested in what could lead into what he's calling energy inequality. It's an interesting term. Addressing the media in Pretoria yesterday, the minister said his department is committed to resolving this issue. Ramokgopa says a failure to get this right could undermine objectives of ensuring that there's universal access to electricity. Take a listen.
We need to bring down that cost structure of generation, because like I said, over a period of time, it's got implications on the tariff structure, because it's a structural issue, if you like, from a pricing point of view, and the teams are beginning to negate, if you like, our over-reliance on diesel. From gigawatts hour terms, the lower we produce electricity from diesel, the lower the gigawatts coming out of that source. And you can see that, week 13 last year, we had generated 58 gigawatts of electricity from open cycle gas turbine. Now, week 13, the comparative period, only 9 gigawatts.
All right, so that's really just a snapshot from what the minister had to say yesterday. And joining us now to make sense of some of those remarks and other issues is Chris Yelland, energy expert, no stranger, of course, on the platform. Chris, great to see you again. Thanks, as always, for making time to speak to us here on the SABC News Channel. Of course, the minister said a lot of things yesterday, but we're hoping to just hone in on this aspect of his briefing. And I'm going to paraphrase part of what he mentioned. He spoke about reviewing the electricity pricing policy in the country such that it doesn't only consider the price of supply, but also takes into consideration people's socio-economic conditions. I wonder if we can just begin by understanding what goes into the pricing of electricity in South Africa.
Yeah, well, firstly to say that there is already in South Africa significant energy poverty, as well as a lack of energy affordability, and poor people are finding it increasingly difficult to have access to electricity simply because of the affordability issue. I mean, for example, in Johannesburg, they introduced a 230 rand per month fixed charge on all prepayment meter customers, which are mainly the poor, including a significant amount of indigent customers, and this dramatically increases the cost of electricity. I mean, a typical 200 kilowatt hour a month customer will be facing a 60% increase in the price of electricity just due to this 230 rand fixed charge. And there is a growing discontent about this. And but to answer your question, how is the electricity price made up? Well, the first thing to note is there are certain fixed components to the price that occur irrespective of how much energy is generated. I mean, this is things like the staff costs of Eskom and municipalities, etc. And then we have the variable costs, which is the cost of actually producing the energy, the kilowatt hours. And then to that, once one knows the costs, there are cross subsidies from the richer to the poorer, from bigger customers to smaller customers, and from urban customers to rural customers. And this cross-subsidization is normal. It helps ease the burden on very remote customers and small customers and poor customers. And lastly, there is certain subsidies, not cross-subsidies, but subsidies received from the fiscus for poverty relief in the form of free basic electricity, and that also gets factored into the price of electricity. So it's quite a complex process, and the ultimate thing is a set of tariffs aimed and targeted at different customer segments, whether they are prepayment meter customers, post-paid residential, post-paid commercial, industrial, and large mining customers. So all of these have different tariffs intended to try and recover the costs of the utility and the distributors in providing this electricity service.
So the sense I'm getting is that there are, if you like, relief measures in place to try hopefully cushion the blow for people who can't afford exorbitant electricity prices, the poor in other words. But for some reason, those relief measures aren't hitting the mark, at least not in ways in which we'd like them to. Why is that?
That is exactly right. I just want to give you one example. Government for many years have had a policy of free basic electricity to indigent households. Now, there are about 10 million indigent households in South Africa who are supposed to be getting 50 kilowatt hours a month of free basic electricity. The reality is that the National Treasury provides the money for this to the municipalities, but the municipalities only provide free basic electricity to about 2 million households, and 80% of the money that is received from National Treasury is misappropriated and used for purposes never intended, and the poor, who are the intended recipients of this money, do not get this money. So it is effectively municipalities stealing money from the poorest of the poor. I'm talking about indigent households, and using them to run their business. And this is an area of dysfunction that has been highlighted by the minister, on Monday, that requires significant attention. And I agree with him. I believe that the way in which these poverty relief mechanisms are intended to reach the poor is not working, and that is the fact. And so we need to really relook at these poverty relief mechanisms and to put in place mechanisms that achieve the intended purpose, namely poverty relief.
So I suppose then the question becomes, how do we get that right? It's the good old corruption story where it seems we have the capacity to fix this problem, but because of decisions made by people in power, we simply can't get around to doing that. And if a solution is urgent, the question becomes, what does that solution look like?
Well, I think the minister would be the first to admit it, and he has said, and I also, we don't have the answers, but what is needed is to first of all acknowledge the problem and the issue at hand, and then get the right people around the table. I'm talking about in the presidency, I'm talking about people in National Treasury, in the Department of Energy and Electricity, municipalities, SALGA, Eskom, COGTA, all NERSA, all the relevant key players, including, by the way, the private sector and customers of electricity, to get them around the table, to understand what the problem is and what the issue is, and then to formulate solutions. Look, there are possible solutions. I'm not trying to suggest one or another. But instead of 80% of the money, that was intended for the poor being used by municipality for other purposes, that money, which is already being given by National Treasury, so the money is available, but one needs to get that money to the recipients. That means the indigent households in a different way that works. And maybe a basic income grant is a better solution. I think it would be wrong for me or anybody to tell an indigent person what their financial priorities are, and say to them, you must buy 50 kilowatt hours you must get 50 kilowatt hours of free electricity per month. I mean, maybe their priorities are food or water or education, or clothing or transport, and to try and force free basic electricity on an indigent household, I don't know if it's the right approach. I don't believe that I am able to tell an indigent person what their immediate needs are, and I would suggest that maybe a basic income grant, using the existing infrastructure that exists through the different social grants, is a better way of getting that money to the people that it's intended to reach.
Fascinating. Chris Yelland, as always, we appreciate your time. And I think if there's going to be any justice in the world, hopefully we'll spend a whole lot more time reflecting on this issue and ways through which it can be solved. Chris Yelland, an energy expert. Once again, thanks very much indeed.